I know with myself on my journey, there was a time where I had no idea what narcissistic abuse was. And in the relationships that I was in, that I felt or that I learned after, had people that to me were high on the scale. When I was in the relationship with them, I was simply trying harder and harder. Covert narcissists are expert manipulators, and they know how to twist things so that you really think it's you. And so you're so busy. You're so busy trying harder. You so genuinely want to make it work that you're yanking your personality inside out to try to make it work. And you're confused as to why it's not. I knew one therapist that told me one time, he's like, narcissists, especially covert narcissists, are such expert manipulators. You can be looking at a yellow wall and they will convince you that it's brown. It's not yellow, it's brown, or it's blue, but they will be so convincing that rather than doubting their perception, you will start doubting your own. Now, to anyone that has never been in a relationship with a narcissist, you're probably quick to be like, oh, that's lack on your part, Michele. There's a problem with you. And maybe to a certain degree there was, right? There's a lack of self-trust. But to anyone that's been through narcissistic abuse, you guys know what that's like. You know what it's like to have your reality spun so fast that everything is blurry. So again, there's that time period where you're just focusing on you. The narcissist is focusing on you and blaming you, and you're focusing on you and blaming you. But at some point, and I've heard different ways that this comes about, but at some point, we stumble on the knowledge about narcissistic abuse. With myself, it was like, okay, well, if it is me and I'm totally screwed up, I'm going to go get help. And that's how I stumbled on the information. I've had clients tell me that the narcissist projected themselves onto the other person and flat out told them that they were malignant narcissists or they were covert narcissists. And the target was like, what are you talking about? Googled it and was like, oh my goodness. That's not me. That's you, honey. And so that's how they found out. Regardless, we stumble into this world where we start realizing that no matter how hard we try, the relationship isn't going to get better because the dynamics of a covert narcissist is they want you in chaos. The more in chaos you are, the better they feel inside. The more calm you are, the more chaos they feel. And that's definitely not what they want. And I know with myself, I also had to come to the conclusion that I needed to change. So there's this time period when you don't understand the information where you're like, okay, if I do this right, then things will change. If I can just get through, they'll get it and then things will get better. Change is dependent on how they are. But as you begin learning this, you start realizing that they're not going to change. Their behaviors that cause you so much emotional suffering are exactly what they want to happen because your emotions are like oxygen for them, right? They call it narcissistic supply. The more emotions you give, the more intense different emotions you exhibit or you are living in, the better they feel. Some of the tactics that they use, for example, the silent treatment. When they are giving you the silent treatment, this is causing you emotional suffering, the pain of not having them speak to you, usually because it's touching on a belief that I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, I'm not enough, or I'm bad. Beliefs that you're not even thinking about consciously, but they're touching on a painful subconscious belief. And when that belief is kicked on, you are in a tremendous amount of suffering. That suffering is oxygen for them. When they try to blame you for everything, there's a lot of pain, there's guilt, there's shame, a lot of emotions that are fueling them. Projection, when they're projecting onto you, you're feeling attacked, you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling anxiety. Again, more fuel for them. In other words, everything they do to cause you emotional suffering is serving their purpose by how you respond. When I learned that, it was kind of hard for me to swallow. And when I also learned that I needed to change how I showed up, it felt impossible. For example, I remember the first time explaining to somebody the silent treatment and having them tell me, Michele, you can watch that and you don't have to let that cause any suffering to you. And I remember thinking how on earth can I be ignored and treated as if I was dead and have that not touch me? It sounded impossible. Or the other thing that I was told, Michele, don't hide your reality. Don't hide that you're getting help because that's something that covert narcissists don't like, right? They want to control you. So if they know you're getting help somewhere, they're going to do something to stop it. So I was hiding that I was getting help. And when the person said, don't hide it, my first thought was, are you kidding? Do you not realize what's going to happen? And this intense fear of how this other person was going to respond. When we broke that down and the person helping me was like, well, what are you afraid of? Are you going to have somebody have their hands on you? Like, is your life in danger? And I was like, no, no. And as we broke down and found the fear, because honestly, it was so unconscious. It was so automatic that there wasn't really any conscious thought to it. So as I peeled it back, I realized that I was afraid that this person was going to be angry, or I was afraid of the silent treatment. I was afraid of the insults, of how this person was going to treat me. But the reality is I was facing those behaviors anyway. And I was afraid of the monologue that would never end. So it was a combination of that fear of how they would treat me, which was happening anyway, I realized, but also what I didn't realize is the underlying meaning that my subconscious beliefs were making their behavior mean. So for example, when I was suffering because of the silent treatment, I was like, well, why am I suffering? I had to find out the reason. Obviously, I didn't like the behavior, but what made me suffer was the fact that when that silent treatment was being administered, what I learned when I really peeled it back to find the belief, the subconscious belief that was getting activated, was that somewhere in my life, my nervous system made this connection that people that were angry meant I was bad. Now, obviously, I didn't form that belief as an adult. It was formed in childhood. And that's why narcissistic abuse is so painful, because they open up those old wounds that aren't fully healed. And so I wasn't even thinking, oh, I'm bad, but my nervous system was. And so anytime I got the silent treatment, there was a tremendous amount of suffering. When I realized that, and I was like, well, do I really believe that I'm a bad person because this person chooses to treat me like I'm dead over things that don't even make sense? No. Once I brought it into my conscious awareness, I could change the meaning. And those are the changes that we have to make so that we don't keep reacting the same way. And so the next time, once I did that, the next time the silent treatment came around, I was like, all right, you do you. I'm going to do me. I started enjoying my alone time. Now, here's the thing with narcissistic abuse. The second you start enjoying something, they change it up because their whole goal is to make you suffer. But my point of sharing that is part of working through this when you start understanding narcissistic abuse is about seeing where they are kind of putting their finger in your eye, so to speak, or in your subconscious beliefs and causing emotional suffering. Once you can start noticing that, you can start changing, upgrading your beliefs and modifying your behavior, not on the outside, not by pretending that it doesn't bother you, but really getting to a place where you make their behavior mean they're an unkind, unloving person at that moment, and you are still a good person. You literally start shifting your belief system. So the changes really are on the inside. I really want to stress that, because a lot of people will just do gray rock and they'll be like, I'm going to pretend, I'm not going to show any emotion, but underneath they're like boiling inside. No, that's not what we want to do, as much as work through why is that boiling there? How can we change our painful beliefs? How can we upgrade our inner wiring, our inner subconscious programs, so that when they act like that, we make it mean the right thing. We make it mean that that is an unkind, unloving behavior and not something painful about ourselves. As you're doing this, you're making these changes because you know who they are. You know exactly what they do. You know why they do, right? Everyone gets like a degree in Narcology 101. After all of the videos, it's like we can spot a narcissist, not only spot, we can also predict, because people that are high on the scale of NPD have the most predictable personalities. They all act so similar that it's almost like when we start learning about them, like I said before, it's like we've all dated the same person or we're all part of the same family because their behaviors are so consistent. So once we start catching on to that, we start changing by not getting sucked into it. All of their behaviors have the desired outcome of causing emotional pain, suffering, and confusion in you. So when you start changing you and how you're showing up, it's because you know who they are, you know exactly what's going on, and they notice. So let's talk about what happens at that moment when they start seeing you change.